Hello Stalkers, Matching here. And with the release of Stalker 2 and of course the Stalker trilogy on console, I thought it would be a good idea to dispel some myths about the original Stalker trilogy, so that the new fans, flooding in won't fall for the same old myths. In this video, we will discuss some of the things that you think you know that ain't so. And of course, I would like to give a huge shout out to the metacognics.com website. These are the guys that host the Zone Reclamation Project, and they have compiled all of this in their website, making the research for this video a whole lot easier. So, now without further ado, let's begin. Shadow of Chernobyl. Artifacts don't respawn. Artifacts in Shadow of Chernobyl work differently than the other games. In a vanilla game, you don't need a detector to locate artifacts. They are always visible. This everyone knows. However, did you know that there actually does exist an artifact respawn feature? When playing Shadow of Chernobyl, you might believe that all artifacts are pre-placed, put there by the devs, and that no more can be acquired. What you see is what you get. But that's not true. Shadow of Chernobyl actually does have the ability to replenish artifacts in the anomalies. And unlike the system in Clear Sky and Call of Pripyat, where there's a chance that artifacts are respawned every emission, in Shadow of Chernobyl, artifacts actually have a small chance to respawn every day based on a small probability calculation. However, unlike the other games, there's a quota of how many artifacts can spawn in an anomaly. But Machine, if artifacts are supposed to spawn every day based on a small chance, how come when I play Shadow of Chernobyl, I swear I never see new artifacts? Well, it's because like most things in the original Stalker, it's bugged to shit. So yeah, the probability calculation for respawning artifacts is very flawed. And because of this, it's unlikely that you will ever see artifacts actually respawn, leading to this myth. And while we're talking about artifacts, here's a couple bonus facts about them in Shadow of Chernobyl. Did you know that electro anomalies, the ones that increase your stamina, only spawn between midnight and 5 AM? Yeah, they only appear at night, and they disappear when the sun comes up. That's why it's recommended that you go to the Agroprom area at midnight, so that you can get the Moonlight artifact in the underground and never worry about stamina again. However, something you have to watch out for is that electro artifacts can sometimes be spawned by breaking boxes, but if it's not nighttime, you won't see them. So yeah, it's kinda devilish. The final fact about artifacts is how exactly the damage calculation for them works. You see, you might think that it's just a basic calculation of damage minus current armor plus artifact or something like that. Basically, you might think that the armor protection and the artifact protection just stack on top of each other and that's it. But that's not the case. Artifact protection is actually applied separate from armor protection. So essentially, it goes like this. Let's say you're wearing an armor that has 50% bullet resistance, and an artifact that has 25% bullet resistance. The obvious answer would be a 75% bullet resistance. So if you're hit by, let's say, a 100 damage bullet with a 75% resistance to it, that will leave 25% damage. But that's not what happens. The actual damage calculation goes like this. Damage, which is in this case 100, so it's 100 times 1 minus 0.5 times 1 minus 0.25. So instead of 25% damage taken, it's actually 37 damage taken. Weird. Essentially, the damage protection of the armor is taken into account first, and then the artifact protection kicks in. So essentially, instead of it, stacking on top of each other, so your armor and your artifact just both taken into account the second damage hits. Instead, essentially what happens is that when you get hit by something, it first takes away the protection from your armor, and then it takes away the protection from your artifact. So they don't stack, they are applied separately, which is why sometimes the damage numbers can get a little broken because the calculation isn't done the way you might expect it to be. Now, let's talk about guns. Guns have quite some misconceptions about them. That the accuracy is completely random, or that sometimes bullets just don't do damage, or that scopes increase accuracy, so let's address that. Firstly, the in-game accuracy statistic is complete bullshit and should most of the time not be relied upon. For example, the Big Ben is listed as having horrible accuracy, when in reality it's more accurate than almost all handguns in the game. So a general rule of thumb is don't trust the in-game accuracy statistic, at least in Shadow of Chernobyl. I do believe they become a little bit better in the sequels, but don't quote me on that. You see, in Shadow of Chernobyl, there are two components to aiming: the accuracy of the gun, which is affected by three factors: the base accuracy of the gun in the files, the condition of the gun, and the ammo type. Yes, ammo type, but don't worry, we'll get to that. And the stance that you're currently on. Both of these are the true factors that go into how accurate your shot will be. About stance. Obviously, moving around will make your inaccuracy stat increase significantly, so the best way to hit your shots is to stand still and use your aim, as aiming will change accuracy. Also, make sure to wait a second after stopping before firing, as your movement inaccuracy might still be in effect. Essentially, the best practice is to get to cover, stop moving, wait a second, and then aim and start firing. This is to make sure that your movement inaccuracy has truly gone away, because if you just run and then immediately start firing after you stop, your movement inaccuracy might still be applied. So instead, just get to cover, stop moving, wait a tick, and then aim and start firing. Now, back to the weapons themselves. Essentially, you have a weapon's natural base accuracy defined by its config file. For example, the Gauss rifle has the lowest at 0.01, while the PM has it at 0.4. Ignoring ammo, but don't worry, we'll get to that. The PM has a natural inaccuracy that is made worse by movement. So a gun's true accuracy is a combination of the inaccuracy stat plus your current stance and movement and the ammo it's firing. The marked one, or your player, when you're not aiming down sights, has an inaccuracy of 0.8. So the PM's inaccuracy will actually be 0.4 plus 0.8 to a total of 1.2. While aiming, the marked one has an inaccuracy of 0.04, leading to an inaccuracy of 0.84 in total, which is much better. But this is not the end of the discussion, as we can finally talk about ammo dispersion. Yes, the type of ammo that you're using will affect your gun's natural inaccuracy, adding to it and making your accuracy much worse. The PM's ammo, both the normal variety and the armor piercing variety, has a comedic 3 times dispersion multiplier, which means the PM's natural dispersion is triple to 1.2. Add on top of that the Marked One's hipfire inaccuracy, and you end up with a total dispersion of 2.0. This is why so many early game weapons seem so inaccurate. It's because it's all these 3 different values working together to fuck you over. Now, the next myth about weapons is that the difficulty changes your probability to hit the target. This is a complete fabrication. Accuracy for the player and the NPCs is not changed at all regardless of difficulty. NPCs use 2 values called hit probability max distance and hit probability JD novice, which doesn't change depending on difficulty. Essentially, these values determine the hit probability of the NPC. So if an NPC shoots you from close range and his bullet hits your hitbox, then the game calculates a hit probability to decide if he actually does damage or not. And the further you are away from them, the more this hit probability drops off, until eventually it's almost impossible to take damage from an NPC. If you want to try this for yourself, just set the hit probability JD novice and hit probability max distance to 0, and just watch as the NPCs are completely incapable of hitting you. Even if you get up close to them, they just can't deal damage to you because the hit probability is 0. Now let's talk about the super bullet effect. You see, all weapons in the game have a value called time to aim. Essentially, your first shot will always do more damage than following shots. In fact, it does a whopping 5 times damage multiplier to NPCs and a huge 10 times multiplier to mutants, while the following shots do normal damage. So essentially, automatic fire is less effective than timed single shots, since if you allow the time to aim value to reach 0 again, you get another super bullet ready to go. So you should always go for headshots, no matter what. and you should avoid full auto fire unless absolutely required. Before we round up this section, here's some additional facts about guns that you might not know. And again, thanks so much for the Metacognics website for supplying me with these numbers. Shots from low-tier weapons like pistols and a sawed-off shotgun available early game are limited to a range of maximum 50 meters. However, ammo can modify this distance. Buckshot lowers the shotgun's range to 37.5 meters, while slugs and darts increase it to 75 and 125 meters respectively. Settling time affects the accuracy of the shots. You can turn on crosshairs to test this. Note how they widen as you move and turn, especially with sniper weapons. Gun condition is critical. Again, turn on crosshairs and switch between a good weapon and a bad weapon of the same type, and you can see this for yourself. Accuracy is reduced on following shots in automatic fire after the first shot, simulating the effects of recoil. Different NPCs and mutant bones have different damage multipliers. Some parts actually have 0 damage, like fingers and toes. This may be why many people believe that NPCs are invulnerable during their hit animations, because when they flinch, they actually cover their torso with their arms. So in turn, you end up shooting less vulnerable parts, which might lead someone to believe that, oh my god, they're suddenly becoming bullet sponges, when in reality they're just kind of shielding themselves with less damaging hitboxes, essentially. Mutants especially have a lot of empty space where no damage is done. If possible, you should always go for the high damage parts like the head. And one last fact here, scopes do not increase your accuracy. Basically all they do is that they zoom in the camera and they put an overlay over your screen, but they don't actually affect the handling or accuracy of the gun at all. However, there is an attachment that actually does impact your gun's handling or accuracy in this case. The suppressor. If you put a suppressor on your weapon in vanilla Shadow of Chernobyl, it will actually become 20% less accurate. This is true. So scopes don't do anything, they're just there for the zoom, and suppressors actually do affect accuracy. So if you want to snipe with a gun and really hit like a faraway shot, you should consider removing the suppressor because it will affect the accuracy of your shot. And now, for the final part of this video, the difficulty settings. What does actually change between difficulties? Is it true that you do more damage on Master? Well, it's complicated. To just get this out of the way first, difficulty does affect your damage, but only in Shadow of Chernobyl, and it's not the way you think it is. Master difficulty does not make your weapons hit harder, it's actually the opposite. You do 120% damage on Novice, with that damage lowering until Master, where it's the normal 100%. In the other games like Clear Sky and Call of Pripyat, regardless of difficulty, you will always do 100% damage. So what does change in Master? Well, the thing that really changes in Master difficulty isn't the damage you do, that's kind of a minor thing. What really changes is your damage resistance. Your damage resistance is the thing that is mostly affected by difficulty in all 3 games. In Shadow of Chernobyl and Call of Pripyat, for example, at Master difficulty you will have 0 damage resistance to bullets, so it's only your armor and artifacts that matter. While in Clear Sky, you actually still keep a 40% damage resistance against bullets even on Master, making it technically the easier of the 3 games. I couldn't find much info about your damage resistance to other damage types, as they seem to vary a lot between the games, but it's easy to assume that the higher your difficulty, the lower your damage resistance. Another thing difficulty changes is the amount of loot that you find in bodies, becoming less on higher difficulties. There is also another value, and this value is only taken into account in Clear Sky and Call of Pripyat, called the grenade throw distance. In higher difficulties, the NPCs will throw grenades at you from much further away. So basically, the higher the difficulty, from further away they're gonna keep pelting you with grenades. There's also another value which is affected by difficulty, but this one is only used in Clear Sky, and it's called damage to final boss. You see, the higher the difficulty, the less damage that you actually do to S.T.A.L.K.E.R at the end of the game. Another value, this time only used in Call of Pripyat, is the last stand value. In Call of Pripyat, if you're playing on the two lowest difficulty settings, the game actually tries to stop you from getting one-shot killed. So basically, if you get hit by something like a Gauss rifle or a really powerful explosion in those two lowest difficulty settings, instead of dying right away, the game actually tries to basically keep you alive with just enough health to survive. So instead of immediately dying to an attack that will instantly kill you, instead you get to survive with just a small little inkling of health left. Anyway, this has been a smaller, quick video. I just wanted to make it real fast to dispel some misconceptions about the series that still somewhat survive to this day. Hopefully this video will help some of you newcomers to understand how the difficulty and gunplay of the original S.T.A.L.K.E.R trilogy actually works. Hopefully that will improve your gaming experience. Anyway, that's all. Chenny out.
Анекдот. Как-то поймали наемника.